and a very warm welcome to this edition of the Blether from me, Gary.
And from me, William. Yeah, it's good to be with you again, folks, and thank you all for your kind messages following last month's Blether with the RSCDS archivist Alan McPherson. A really interesting session we had with Alan. You all seem to enjoy that very much.
Yeah, we've had absolutely brilliant feedback, which is
Yeah.
really nice to hear. And Alan does a wonderful job looking after many of the important documents and artifacts that trace the history of Scotland's social dancing. And as we said last month, you can go and visit it.
Absolutely,
It's present.
absolutely. Yeah, Alan is there on a Tuesday and a Thursday, so knock on the door and go and see the archive if you're in Edinburgh. Now, joining us today, we're very pleased indeed. In fact, I feel I should stand up to welcome a gentleman, an MBE no less, who has throughout his lifetime been involved in many aspects of Scottish dancing and is a trustee of the Scottish Tartans Authority.
Absolutely. It's a warm welcome to Malcolm Ferris Lay. Welcome, Malcolm.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good to see you, Malcolm. Yeah, great to see you. And, I think the last time the three of us met was in some dungeon tavern underneath Princess Street in Edinburgh or something, was it?
It was indeed, and I was good enough to carry you both out.
You were indeed, and we're very grateful for that.
Yeah, people might think he's joking, William, but he's not.
No, he's not. No, he's not. No, no. It was, from what I can remember, it was a grand wee night. But anyway, that's beside the point. But that is, in fact, how Scottish country dancing brings us together.
Yeah.
Because without that, we would never have met. Well, the three of us would never have met, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tartan is something that all of us involved with Scottish dancing, Scottish culture, wears a kilt or a trews or a sash or whatever. But before we get to that, Malcolm, I'm interested to know, you were brought up in the East End of London, and I know your parents actually went through the Blitz and so on in the East End of London. What else were you doing, taking up Scottish dancing and music and stuff as an East End boy?
My mother was a ballet dancer. You can blame Hitler for ending up in the East End of London. And what happened was there was a lot of guys that were actually in the 51st Highland Division that were caught up at Dunkirk, and they went into the prisoner of war camp. When they came back, they settled in, or lots of them, in and around London. And they actually started a pipe band. And I recall on one day, I saw the pipe band. I was with my mother at the time, and I saw the pipe band. 4 guys came out with swords, did a sword salute, and started the Argyle broadswords. And I said to my mother, I want to do that. And I was only dinky. And fortunately, there was also a Highland dance teacher not a million miles away. And that's how it all started.
Fantastic story, Gary. Great story.
Yeah, very similar to myself. Actually, I saw a demonstration team of Scottish dancing and said to my mum, I want to do that. And she went, what?
Yeah.
Ended up, doing it. So you started with Highland and then took up Scottish.
I did Highland for many, many years. Competed at the games in Braemar, Boyne, Oban, competed in the Worlds. So I stopped competitive dancing at roughly 25, 26. And then being still down in London, we did a huge amount of not so much demonstrations. We were being employed by the likes of the Scotch Whisky Association and the Scottish Tartans, the Scottish Tourist Board. And then I got involved with Dewar's Scotch Whisky. And I found myself sort of going abroad, dancing and promoting the whiskey. And then just after that, at the grand old age of 27, I got married actually to a British Caledonian air hostess. And at that time, they had a really superb pipe band. And I went to see her off on one occasion, and the guys who I knew, a lot of the pipers, said, why don't you come down and dance for us? And I did just that. And up in Scotland, we had Bill Forsyth, who was then a world champion. And I was down south, and we literally traveled the world. We went to South America, West Africa, all over Europe. And I did that for 14 years.
That was promoting
British Caledonian Airways.
Flights. Yeah, great. And you know, talking about Highland dancing, because I was a Highland dancer as a child as well, I wish we could convince more Highland dancers when they stop at that early age, or maybe mid-20s or whatever, to come Scottish country dancing. That doesn't seem to happen very often, which is such a shame.
I've thought that on so many occasions, and I've spoken to them, and I don't know whether it's because they sort of get to the age of 25, they then start getting involved with either a guy or a girl or whatever the case may be, and off they go. And there must be literally hundreds and hundreds of them out there that could do Scottish country dancing and would get so much pleasure from it. I mean, when I stopped Highland, well, Highland stopped me because of knees and everything else.
Yeah.
You just naturally progress into country, although I did country at the same time, actually.
Yeah. I often tell some of the folks that, because I did Highland dancing and country dancing at the same time, and you know, sometimes you can tell Highland dancers on the country dance floor because A, they're bouncing and far too high on their feet. And I often say to them in a class, if I'm doing it, I'll say, I did Highland dancing and country dancing. You know what I learned very, very early on? The difference, you
Yeah,
know, and it's quite,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get into Scottish country then, Malcolm?
Well, again, because the same group. I mean, there was a group in Walthamstow. It was originally called Walthamstow Folk and Song Dance Society or something along those lines, and they did all sorts of dancing. And my dancing teacher, she also went there, and as a consequence, I ended up doing Scottish country dancing. Probably at the age of, I started country at about the age of 15. So, you know, sort of 40 years ago or thereabouts.
Right. So the Scottish Tartans Authority then, right? You're
Yeah.
involved with that. You're a trustee of that. What
Yes.
is the Scottish Tartans Authority?
Well, the STA was formed in 1995, and I mean basically it's dedicated to the preservation and the promotion of tartans, the origins also of Highland dress, basically history and education. I mean, we're very fortunate. We have quite a wonderful archive of really wonderful tartans and so on and so forth. And on our database, we've got over 12,000 different tartans. We've got the largest database of tartans in the world. So if someone is going to have a new tartan, they would register it with the Scottish Register of Tartans. There's then a meeting of which two of our representatives, if you like, they attend. They look at these various tartans and say, yes, we can call it that, or no, it's too similar to a McDonald or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
So how did you get involved in that? When did you get involved in that?
Well, here we go again. Again, we can blame a good old Cockney jock. When I was a sort of growing up, I was probably 17 or 18. We used to go to Portobello Market and the Caledonia Market antiques. And he once said to me, you know, Malcolm, you should start collecting things, you know. And I decided to collect ski and doos. And I've now probably got the largest collection of ski and doos in the country.
Really?
I've written a book on them. And I met John McLeish, who is chairman of the Scottish Tartans Authority, at a Lion and Turnbull auction. He was bidding for spoons. I was bidding for ski and doos. We started to chat, and it all developed from there. Basically, we both have a passion for Highland dress and tartans, etc. Or rather like that, the Blether.
What, the mug?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like one?
No expense
I
spared.
would love one.
But you're not getting one. This is worse than the BBC, the RSCDS.
Would
Two
you
mugs,
like
that's
one
it.
of these with Malcolm written on it?
No, thanks. No, you're
you
fine.
sure?
No, we don't
Yeah.
dish this out. No.
Can I just ask Malcolm, maybe could you explain what a ski and do is? Because maybe not all of our viewers and listeners will be quite aware of what a ski and do is.
A ski and do is a small knife that, generally speaking, one wears on the right-hand side in the hose. I'm old, so it's probably sort of eight inches long or something. If you want to make that into centimeters, that's fine. They probably started off as a utility knife. They're not that old. I mean, the oldest ones I've got that we definitely know would probably be 1840s, something along those lines. And they slowly became really quite decorative, particularly during the Edwardian era and the end of the Victorian era and the beginning of the Edwardian era. All part of Highland dress, and some of them are very, very ornate indeed, with quartz handles and so on and so forth. So
I mean, everything about Highland dress had a purpose at one point, didn't it? I mean, I always try and describe the kilt to visitors or folks who ask me about it, that basically it was a sleeping bag. And I was glad the other night on the television there was a program on about Scotland, and there was a guy in a kilt, and he was explaining about the kilt, and he said basically it was a sleeping bag, you know.
absolutely.
And then the bit that came around became the plaid, and the belt that held it together was, and everything, probably Queen Victoria's time was just kind of smartened up, and at that
Well,
point, Ian
yeah,
Duke
I mean,
became.
I think you can sort of Sir Walter Scott was the one really that started things off, without a doubt. I mean, he organised this wonderful display of Highlanders and so on and so forth, and that's where it really started, if you like.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
thank goodness he did. Thank goodness he did.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's now, when you consider it, it's, if you talk to anyone around the world, and both you and I have been fortunate enough to travel the world, and you talk of Scotland, they will talk about bagpipes, Edinburgh Castle, tartan, Highland dress,
Yeah.
etc. It's just renowned.
Yeah.
It's wonderful form of advertising of Scotland.
And sometimes, sadly, in this country, lots of people seem to be a wee bit embarrassed by it. And I just find that unbelievable when no other country in the world has got music, dance, and dress like Scotland
I
has.
couldn't agree more. I mean, I went down to London only last week, just for, actually I went down, it was the London Gaelic Choir. They were having a concert, and also they were having a ceilidh, and I was calling at the ceilidh, and I travelled down in my kilt, and I travelled back up in my kilt, and I'm very, very proud to wear it.
Great stuff.
Right. And am I right in saying you mentioned there you've got the biggest, you think you've got the biggest collection of ski and do's in the world? Is that right?
Probably. I mean, it's
Probably.
certainly a lot bigger than the National Museum of Scotland's.
Right.
How many have you got? How many have you got then?
I can't tell you that, because I mean, everyone's going to be knocking at the door looking for them. It's in three figures.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
Incredible.
where do you keep them?
Sorry?
Where
Any
do you
sock?
keep them?
Any sock,
In
Dopey?
his-
Any
Yes,
sock?
well, if I really want to get dressed up, I put them in both hose all the way around the legs. I've got a cabinet. It's, I suppose the best way to describe it is almost like a coin cabinet.
Mm.
So there's a whole series of drawers. The top opens up rather like a desk, but it's glass fronted, so I can change them round if I wish. Yeah.
Malcolm, to go back to tartans though, and you know, the history of the tartan, it's an interesting one because everybody thinks of the tartan being for your clan or your name or whatever. Am I right in saying that possibly tartan began with a black and white shepherd's check in the border country even?
It might well have done. I mean, it's very different. I mean, Wilson's of Bannockburn were wonderful weavers. They started weaving these various tartans, and they became a fashion icon, if you like. And then various, I think it was the London Highland Society, they sent out a letter to the various chiefs and said, we would like a swatch, if you like, of your particular tartan, so that we can have a record of these various tartans. Some of the tartans that the chief sent back were just a stock tartan that Wilson's would sell, and they would give that their name. I won't mention any names, but it would have a certain name to it, and therefore you had this big register, if you like, of tartans. So it doesn't go back that long. You're talking about 1740s, that sort of era, along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And
But
then just
prior
after,
to that, sorry.
yeah, and then just after that, of course, the Jacobite rebellion put paid to a lot of it, didn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, 1745. But I mean, if you take that, for instance, I mean, people like to think that perhaps all the McNabs that were there and all the McDonalds, they were all wearing exactly the same or their own particular clan tartan. That's not the case. You know, they would be wearing all sorts of things because they would be homespun, if you like, or home woven. So it depends where you came from. Yeah, it's fascinating. Ski and do's, I understand. We have probably the world's leading authority on tartans in Peter MacDonald. I mean, the man's verging on genius. He really is. And he is head of research and collections of the Scottish Tartans Authority.
And while we're on particular tartans, Malcolm, we've had a question in from one of our members in Sweden, actually. I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this one, but they've asked, do you know who designed the Black Watch tartan?
Well, the very simple answer is no one knows who designed that. In 1725, General George Wade, that did all the roads, etc., he was tasked, or he started 4 independent companies of Highlanders. In 1739, the first ones were the 43rd. They later became the 42nd, which was the Black Watch, and that is when we think that the Black Watch tartan first came into being. Now, quite a number of people would say that perhaps because the Campbells were involved, it's the background is that of a Campbell tartan, but there's no official records as to when it was actually first woven or whatever. But we are saying roughly 1739, that sort of period.
And of course, we've got to remember these regiments were raised to pacify the Highlanders.
Yeah.
But actually, they weren't Highlanders. They were raised by the British Army, I suppose, to pacify the Highlands. So it's an interesting one, the Black Watch one.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I think we'll steer away to that because it ends up in politics. And we're talking Scottish country dancing.
Of course we are. Of course we are. Yeah, yeah.
They're interlinked, aren't they? Politics and Scottish country dancing.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the patron of the Scottish Tartans Authority is the King, as he is the Royal Scottish Country Dance Society, which
is indeed
must have been, like yourselves, a great relief when we discovered who our patron was going to be, because they kept us hanging on for a wee while.
He did.
Did the palace. I was almost going and chapping on the door because I was getting my ear bitten by all the members about what was happening. Anyway, he's had a new tartan design. So how does that happen? How do you go about? How did he go about getting a new tartan when he became king?
Well, that was actually designed by Peter MacDonald, who I mentioned earlier, and it was based on the Balmoral tartan, and he took from the Balmoral tartan, and he then sort of came up with, I think it was about 4 different designs actually, well, 4 that I saw, and they were narrowed down. They were then shown to His Majesty, and he chose the particular tartan. And obviously we're thrilled that he chose it, and he wore it for the first time at the Braemar Games. It was lovely to see him wear it. And I have to say, what a great advocate he is for wearing tartan and Highland dress. Yeah. He's very, very, very supportive of all Scottish organisations, your own, the pipe band world, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, we are proud of that.
And wears it well, because we've all seen different styles of wearing the kilt, let's just put it that way. And you have to wear it, don't you? You have to get it right to look good, you know, a bit of knee and a bit of leg showing. And
well,
when the hose meet the kilt,
you need an operation.
William's still practicing to see if he can wear it right.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, but it is an interesting subject. And again, it's a bit like Scottish country dancing. It's a bit like the music for Scottish country dancing. There's a new tartan, still designing new tartans, and anybody can go and have a tartan design, can't they, Malcolm?
Yeah, they can. I mean, you pay your money to the Scottish Register of Tartans, and if it comes up with all the right criteria, you call it the Williamson the third Tartan, or whatever the case may be.
Don't
Yeah,
give him
yeah,
ideas.
yeah. No, 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 no. I
He'll be
couldn't.
selling it.
I mean, I can.
He'll have that tartan registered and he'll be selling it for his holiday fund.
I can just see you going around with one, the Coull tartan. That just doesn't. Yeah, this
That would
isn't.
be very cool, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Oh, it'd be awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very proud to wear my mother's tartan, actually, the Cameron of Ericht.
That's a nice Tartan.
Yeah, it's a lovely. Well, it was the very, very first tartan I wore as a wee boy. And when my mother passed away, I needed a new kilt. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a Cameron again. So
Yeah.
that's what I wear. And my trews are of course, trews are very much a lowland thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the lowland regiments. Well, sadly, we haven't anymore. I mean,
No,
the
we haven't.
KOSBs, the Camerons, etc., or Cameronians, I should say, would wear the Douglas, and the KOSBs would be wearing the Leslie tartan.
I mean, I'm very fond of wearing my trews. Gary, you wear your trews as well, and it's
I wear trews, yeah, I wear trews and the kilt. In fact, the kilt that I got married in was Bruce.
still goes round you, does it?
It just COVID had a bit of a shrinking impact on my kilt. But actually, interestingly, it was Bruce Fraser's kilt, a name that'll be familiar to a lot of our listeners and viewers. Bruce, a very well-known and respected teacher in the RSCDS, and it was his kilt that I ended up with, and it was Anne Taylor, who we just recently lost.
late
He made it for me because she's a great kilt maker.
There you are.
So
See, Malcolm, he doesn't buy anything new.
it cost me a box of chocolates.
Ah,
Oh,
dear me.
But what's
Dear.
great is it's Bruce's kilt, but it's
Yep.
not quite getting the earring now as it used to do. But it's still in the cover, and I'm planning to get it refitted again.
Furbished. Good idea. Lovely, absolutely great. So, Malcolm, the Ceilidhs in London. I mean, I have to say, you're now living in Edinburgh.
yes.
It's great to have you up here. Absolutely terrific. But I know that you've, for years and years and years, you've called huge Ceilidhs down in London over many, many years. I know you're president of the Caledonian Society, I think, in London still.
The Caledonian Society of London
So
president.
tell us about the Caledonian Society and tell us about these massive Ceilidhs that go on in London then.
Well, the Ceilidhs were actually started by a chap here in Edinburgh called Ed McCabe. And I remember doing the first one, or one of the first ones, within 22, 23 years ago. And it was a very small affair. I mean, we had this huge, great hall in the centre of London. And I think he had 3 sets. And he's just continually worked hard to get people to come. He regularly gets at least 200 people a night. I think he probably does 3 Ceilidhs a month. And then when it comes to Burns and St Andrews, I remember on one occasion doing a Virginia reel, and we had 52 sets. And he just doesn't do the one night. There's so many people want to come. He will do a couple of nights, one after the other. It's incredibly popular. And the annoying part, well, not necessarily annoying, the frustrating part is the vast majority, I would put an average age of, I don't know, 26, something along those lines. They go away with huge grins on their faces, and yet try and get them to do Scottish country dancing. You might get an element in years to come that think, do you know, I went to that Ceilidh, great fun, lovely music, etc., and then try and find somewhere to do a Scottish country dance class. But they're incredibly successful and they're loved, you know.
That's amazing. Wonderful. Getting so many people up on the dance floor in a night is wonderful. Is there a lot of returning people to these Ceilidhs? Do you see the same faces, or is it quite transient in terms of different people coming? And what do you think the secret is to getting 200 people to come along to it?
I mean, they're from all walks of life, without a shadow of a doubt, and quite often, lots of them don't speak English, and when they'll come along, fortunately, I do say to them that I speak 7. I'm very fortunate. I speak 7 languages fluently. I tell them I speak English, American, Canadian, Australian, etc. But they just enjoy it. And I think a lot of it is sort of word of mouth and good publicity. I mean, he advertises in various magazines and so on and so forth. If you go on websites, he's on websites, he's on Facebook, he's on all these sort of social media things, and he pushes. He provides a really good, fun, enjoyable evening, and that's what it is. They come in. None of them, well, say none of them. You might get half a dozen that know what they're doing. The rest have no idea whatsoever, and you just make it a fun evening. It's as simple as that, you know. And we do the same sort of dances week in, week out. We don't vary them that much. We just make it fun.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the key things, isn't it?
Yeah,
About
very
making it
much
fun.
so.
But funnily enough, it relates back to one of our very first Blethers, William, about when we had Lucy Fallon talking about marketing and getting new people to come in and dance. And we were saying then how, it's not a case of just throw up a poster anymore and people will come to us. It's that constant having to publicise, having to market it, doing all the Facebook, the social media stuff. But it's constant and it's hard work now to be having to push all of these things all of the time.
Absolutely. You don't get something for nothing.
Yeah.
So you've got to continually work. Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
No, no.
No.
Yeah, I mean, marketing is everything without a doubt, and then also being welcomed. You know, when you arrive somewhere, I mean, you're new if you're doing Scottish country dancing. I've been fortunate. I've danced in many clubs. You go, and it just depends if the people sort of engage with you. Hello, good evening. I'm William. What's your name? Malcolm. You start to chat, and what I've always found is something I've always hated is being pushed. When I say I'm physically pushed. When I was 14, 15, I used to go to the Royal Scottish Corporation in Fetter Lane in London, which was a big building. You had all the various Scottish organisations there. They used to have dances there on a Saturday night, and I used to go on the back of my brother's motorcycle in my kilt and go there. And I was fortunate enough because commonly known as Little Malcolm, I was dinky. I was the only youngster, if you like. But I would go in the fourth position. So consequently, I could see the dances performed before it was my turn. I think perhaps now, and this is probably controversial, some of the dances are so complex, new people could come along. And if someone out of the goodness of their heart says, come and dance with me, I'll get you through it. And they get completely disorientated and they think, oh, I'm not so sure that I like that. I don't know. That's a personal view. It's not, it's nice to be able to see what's going on and how you do it. And obviously back then, I mean, we're talking 1964, there weren't nearly as many dances as what there are now, and they certainly were nearly not as complex as some of the dances now.
Malcolm, you're right. I think that's such a difficult one for us, isn't it? We're not an instant hit. You've got to work at Scottish country dancing a little bit. But B, and people have heard me saying this before, I remember, you know, classes would say start in September, and most dances were just four formations, and they would pretty much finish the same way, down the middle and up poussette, or set and turn corners and or
Yep.
the second set. And if you started in September, there's a fair chance you were able to go to the dance at Christmas. And
Yes.
people get to that dance with the food and the band and the fun and dressing up. You've got them then.
Yeah.
People, I think back to the 90s when we did have lots of complicated. In fact, I'll be honest, I used to look at programs and think, I'm not going to that.
Yeah.
I knew it would just not be a great night because people have got their heads down people may have any other ideas about this, but I just think in a way we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes. And we've got to maybe just get back to a core of dances that you can do, because if you say to people at Christmas, sorry, but you'll not be able to come to the Christmas dance,
Oh,
you won't get through this program. and then they go, oh, they didn't come back after Christmas. Well, I wonder.
And you wonder why.
So we've really got to watch these kind of things, I think.
I
We do that.
agree with you entirely on that one. I think it's you have to develop, obviously, and that I fully appreciate. But you've also got to consider the newer people that are coming in starting. And I think the other thing is we've also got to realise, I mean, I'm now, I'm an old man, but you're not necessarily going to get the movement that you would get when you're younger. And again, going back to my mother, when she was in her 80s, as I say, she was a trained ballet dancer. She might not have been able to move that well, but the one thing that she could always do, she would be at the right place on bar 8, 16, 24, or whatever it was. And I think that's something else. How many people listen to this wonderful music and count? I know I'm dreadful all the time. I'm counting 5, 6, 7, 8. But the music is just lifts you in any case.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting. It goes back to the episode we had with Pete Clark as well, and we spoke about, some of the best Scottish tunes are the simple ones, keeping it simple, and very similar with dances. And it's looking at that broad range of what the audience wants effectively.
Yes.
Some people want to do the complex, really difficult, get their teeth into it. But if you've got somebody new coming into the class, you need to keep it simple to be able to retain them so that they enjoy themselves and they come back the following week.
Yeah.
So it's looking at providing something for everybody, but really, if somebody new comes in, then keep it simple.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you entirely, Gary. I mean, it's lovely to do a complex dance and do it well. But again, I think we want to get more people in and dancing, and I think that we've got to consider them. And we talk about the Scottish Tartans Authority. I mean, I think what's going to happen in 15, 20, 25 years' time, you've got to consider that, and you've got to do exactly the same with the RSCDS. You want to be around in another 100 years. I shan't be here. You might, possibly, but that's what you've got to do. And there are so many things out there now that people can do. I mean, there's literally so much going on. Every single night, there's something going on somewhere. So we need to consider newer people coming in and actually keeping them.
Yeah, and that's a discussion for another time probably as well, but it's so important. And I think we're all wrestling with that, wherever we are with our country dancing classes and so on. Malcolm, we're rapidly running out of time. It's been fascinating, and great talking about Tartan. Just scratched the surface of it all, really. But fascinating about yourself as well, because I know that you were awarded an MBE, and I think Prince William awarded you that at
He
Windsor.
did.
What are you going to do about getting Prince William into a kilt?
That's a very good question, and we've discussed this at length, and that's as far as I'm going.
That's fine. Because I think he would look great in a kilt. But
so do I. Well, yes, yeah.
But
Malcolm,
so Scottish Tartans Authority, dancing, all that kind of stuff, is that all hobbies? Do you have a day job?
Well, no. I mean, I've retired, but for 52 years, I started life as a tea taster or a trainee tea taster, and I've been a tea taster all my life, and ended up as managing director of a tea company. Hence, desperate for one of those mugs. However,
you're not getting one.
It'll cost you.
It's very sad indeed.
Try and get the £2.75 out of Lizzie Condor if you can, and you'll.
Well, that's like getting blood out of a stone, isn't it?
But I'm a tea taster, so you went to India a lot and polo on elephants. Talking about Lizzie, funny.
Well, yes. I mean, I was elephant polo was a regular thing that I played. Great fun.
There we go. Scotland have been world champions at elephant.
Yes, I mean, it's Duke of Argyll, if my memory serves me right.
There you go.
It's the Duke of Argyll, was indeed. Yeah. And what about the white water rafting? And aren't you a canoe judge, rafting judge or something?
I was Yeah, I was chairman of British Whitewater Rafting, so I did whitewater rafting. I was also chairman of British Canoe Union Lifeguards, so I was a qualified coach in water sports, if you like.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
It's been an absolute joy talking to you. That's the quickest half hour I've ever had. We scratched the surface of Tartans, do's and all sorts of stuff. But I hope you'll come back on sometime
I'd be delighted.
let's make sure that the RSCDS and the Scottish Tartans Authority, you know, build a kind of relationship too, because it's
I would like to do that. I think there's a great synergy between the two, and I think it's important that we all work together for the same common end, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll have a word with the chairman and see if we can sort that out.
Is he a good guy?
Well,
Try and find him.
I try and find him, yeah.
But it's absolutely right, Malcolm. It's all of these kind of, you know, cultural organisations that have an interest in Scotland.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of us are worldwide organisations, but having that kind of Scottish culture element to us all, it's so important, particularly nowadays, that we work together.
Well,
help each other out.
yeah, I mean, I recall actually dancing in what was when I was at Madras or Chennai in South India. And I turned up in my kilt, and you had all these lovely ladies in their saris, etc. And it was just great, you know, and they were delighted the fact that I was wearing a kilt. So, I mean, Scottish country dancing is universal as well, you know, and it's sadly, it almost seems to be thriving more overseas than it is back home.
But it does bring people together in the best possible way. It really
absolutely. The diaspora, I mean, always.
No, thanks a lot, Malcolm, for that. That's absolutely great. Before we go, Gary, next month we've got we're overseas, aren't we?
We're going overseas. Well, we're not going overseas because I mean, struggled to even get a mug out of Lizzie. Never mind a flight to Canada.
She'll not pay for anything.
No, but very exciting. I mean, I do get excited with these Blethers, but we do have two people from Canada, Fiona Miller and Sharon Barker, who are members of the Teachers Association Canada, and they have been involved in a very exciting project, the John Drury project. And we'll let them tell us more about that next month, but it's all about collecting and preserving the dances that John Drury, from Aberdeen, of course, had devised, and cataloguing them and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be a really, really interesting episode next month. And it'd be great to meet up with Fiona and Sharon again.
I think I'm right in saying that John actually originated from Cumbria, but we're not going to argue about it.
He did, but he ended up in God's country up in the northeast.
Oh, what the northeast are like for claiming everything. Actually, nothing for the northeast. There you go. Listen, Malcolm, it's very much indeed. It's been a
lovely to see you both.
The next time we're in Edinburgh, we'll need to go down to that cavern underneath Princess Street again and have a wee swally, as they say in these parts.
That would be lovely. Greatly look forward to it. Thank you very much.
If we're allowed back in.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Great. Thank you, Malcolm.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Until we see you all next month, it's cheerio from me and him.
And it's cheerio from him and me.